There's a painful moment many people experience but rarely talk about. You start caring more. You become more understanding, more patient, more available. You think you're doing the right thing, and yet somehow respect starts slipping away. Not instantly, not dramatically, just enough for you to feel it. People interrupt you more. They take longer to respond. They assume you'll understand. They assume you'll wait. And one day you realize something uncomfortable. The more you cared, the less seriously you were taken. This creates confusion, because society teaches us that caring is a virtue, that empathy builds connection, that being emotionally invested should strengthen bonds. But psychology tells a more complicated truth, one that most people only learn through quiet disappointment. Respect doesn't disappear because you care. It disappears because how you care changes the balance of power. And that shift happens long before anyone notices it consciously. This video is about that invisible shift, about why caring too much often leads to diminished respect, about how emotional investment, when unmanaged, signals vulnerability instead of strength. And most importantly, how to care without losing yourself in the process. If you've ever felt overlooked after giving your best, if you've ever wondered why effort didn't translate into appreciation, then stay with me. Because once you understand this psychology, you'll never approach relationships the same way again. Caring deeply changes how people perceive your availability. When your concern becomes consistent and unconditional, the brain stops registering it as effort and starts registering it as a guarantee. And guarantees quietly lower perceived value. Psychologically, people respect what they feel they could lose. When loss is removed from the equation, appreciation weakens. And this doesn't mean people consciously decide to disrespect you. It means their behavior adapts to what feels safe and permanent. When you care too much, you often adjust yourself to maintain harmony. You respond faster, you explain more, you compromise sooner. And while these actions seem loving, they also communicate something else, that the relationship matters more to you than it does to them. That imbalance doesn't need to be spoken. Humans are highly sensitive to emotional cues. The moment someone senses you are more invested, the dynamic shifts. They feel less pressure to show up fully because you already are. This is how caring becomes currency. The more you spend it without limit, the less it's worth. And over time, people stop earning what you freely give. Another reason respect diminishes when you care too much is that over-investment signals vulnerability. People instinctively sense who relies on them emotionally. When they know someone will forgive, tolerate, or overextend for them, the natural checks of accountability weaken. Psychologically, respect thrives on balance. It is built when effort, boundaries, and reciprocity intersect. When you give endlessly without requiring acknowledgement or fairness, the balance tips. Your goodwill becomes predictable, and predictability is often mistaken for weakness. The most subtle consequence is that you inadvertently teach others how far they can push. Every compromise without boundary reinforces a pattern. Your care is limitless, your patience is endless, your presence is guaranteed. And in response, they test limits, consciously or unconsciously, simply because they now know they can. Over time, the dynamic is almost invisible from the inside. You feel like you're being helpful, loyal, or loving, yet quietly, respect erodes. The shift doesn't happen because of malice. It happens because humans value what is scarce and contingent, not what is constantly available. Caring too much without boundaries is like pouring water into a cup with a hole. You give endlessly, but the cup is never full in the eyes of others. And psychologically, people respect the cup that holds something they cannot take for granted. Caring too much also changes how people interpret your intentions. When you consistently accommodate, forgive, or anticipate others' needs, it can be misread as a lack of backbone or confidence. Ironically, what you see as empathy can appear to others as dependency. Psychology shows that respect is closely tied to perceived independence. People admire those who maintain emotional and personal boundaries. When those boundaries are absent, even your kindness can seem like submission. They may not think they care too much. Instead, they think they'll do whatever I want, no matter what. This perception doesn't always come from malice. It comes from how the human mind evaluates social hierarchies. We naturally assign higher status to those whose attention, time, and energy feel earned rather than freely given. Overgiving removes scarcity. Scarcity drives value. And without value, respect begins to fade. The paradox is clear. Your care, which was meant to strengthen relationships, can quietly weaken them. Emotional generosity without boundaries often flips its own power dynamic. The more you invest without limit, the less people are motivated to match it, because they sense there's no consequence for their underperformance. Respect thrives in balance. Too much care, too much patience, and too much availability can quietly signal the opposite. Caring too much also affects how you see yourself, and that changes everything. When you're constantly giving, forgiving, and prioritizing others, you may start measuring your worth by how much you can give rather than who you are. Psychology shows that self-respect is contagious. People instinctively mirror the confidence and boundaries of those around them. When you lack boundaries, others unconsciously lower their respect because you have unconsciously lowered it for yourself. Your overinvestment sends a subtle message. My needs, my limits, my time, they are secondary. And humans wired to sense social hierarchy respond accordingly. They take what is offered, push gently, and rarely appreciate fully. This is why caring too much often leads to burnout. Your energy depletes, your voice softens, and your presence, once magnetic, becomes overlooked. You begin giving out of obligation or fear rather than choice. And the irony is brutal. People respect the distance you finally enforce more than the devotion you freely offered. The lesson is clear. Respect is not earned by endless care. It is earned by presence combined with boundaries, by being available but not unlimited, by loving but not at the expense of your own self-worth. The psychology of respect doesn't reward overextension, it rewards equilibrium. The truth is uncomfortable. Caring too much can quietly erode the very respect you hope to earn. It's not because people are ungrateful, but because human psychology values balance, independence, and scarcity. Unlimited availability signals predictability, dependence, and low cost, and what comes without cost rarely commands respect. Understanding this doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care differently, with intention, with boundaries, with awareness. When you learn to give without overextending, to love without losing yourself, and to be present without being predictable, respect naturally follows. It doesn't demand explanation, it doesn't beg for attention. It simply exists. Here's a quiet challenge for you. For the next week, pay attention to where your care is unlimited. Pick one area where you usually give too much. Your time, your energy, your emotional availability, and hold back slightly. Observe how people respond, not to test them, not to manipulate, but to understand the invisible dynamics of respect and self-worth. And if you find yourself learning something unexpected from this exercise, share the insight in ways that ripple outward. The more you understand, the more you see patterns others miss, and the more you realize respect is rarely demanded but always earned through balance. Remember, subtle shifts can change everything. Keep watching, keep noticing, and see how quietly powerful you can become.